Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wired, the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. Back at you with USC women's basketball analyst Cece Clay. It's part of our Big Ten season preview series. Today, teams projected by Cece to be in places 14 through 10. And before we get started with your team-specific notes, numbers, and observations, Cece, would it be safe to say that in an 18-team conference, teams 10 through 14 are all missing the NCAA tournament, meaning that the Big Ten would have no more than 9 bids to the NCAA tournament? Or is team number 10 perhaps a bubble team, a team that could sneak in? What's your general overview there before we get into these 5 teams?
Yeah, I think 10 can sneak in, especially the way the conferences are laid out. 10 can sneak in and be a bubble team and maybe do a play-in game. It just depends on how the other conferences roll out next season and how their teams do. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just good to have that in mind. People might be interested in that. All right, let's start with number 14 on your list.
Yes, again, I have to preface this by saying I'm new to this, but I'm true to this. And this was difficult, not knowing the teams. Like I know the Pac-12 teams. So again, these 5 teams I think can fluctuate, but for the most part, I think these 5 teams will be ranked in this order somewhere within these 5 rankings. So at number 14, I have Penn State. Penn State, they got Grace Burkle back. They also have Kaomi McMiller, but last year they were in the 69th percentile for offense, which was in the green, but it's the light green. And defensively, they struggled. They were in the 39th percentile, which is really bad. So they have a lot of work to do in order to jump up to that higher echelon of teams. I just don't see them, um, you know, being ranked lower than 10 or higher than 10, between that 10 and 14 mark. But I have them at 14. They shot 46% from two. They struggled from three. They're a guard oriented type of team. So they don't play a good defense. So I just have them at 14.
I think the one question I'd have with Penn State is, this team out of nowhere upset Ohio State last season, and people might say, well, hey, if you're good enough to beat Ohio State, maybe this team could be a little underrated. It could kind of sneak up on people, but maybe that was just Ohio State having a really, really bad clunker. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that Ohio State win last season, and if it means anything in terms of appraising Penn State going into this season?
No, I don't think so. I think that's Ohio State. Ohio State, they play with ebbs and flows all the time. It seems like they get to their best right towards the end of the season, and through the season they come with energy and they don't come with energy. I think last year with Ohio State, which we'll get to later on, I think Kaomi McMiller, Cody McMahon. I'm sorry, Cody McMahon transferring out is going to be a change dynamically for them. But there were a lot of questions with Cody McMahon there, and was she playing to her best ability while she was at Ohio State? So Ohio State has some questions, but Penn State, I don't see them. They had 7 transfer out. So, you know, go figure.
All right, number 13 on your list.
Okay, this is going to shock a lot of people with my number 13th team, but I'm going with Indiana. I think Indiana is going to be um, dropping next year because they have a massive rebuild. They have 5 transferred in. They had 6 transferred out, including Garzon, who was their best player. And so I think that they're in rebuild mode right now. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what they do. They also lost Shea Chesky, who was their 3-point sniper. So they finished ninth last year, and I don't think that they upgraded anywhere. So I knocked them down to 13.
I think the main question here is that Indiana has had such kind of a steady, reliable core for a number of seasons. So just to kind of emphasize this point, like this marks the lack of a high level of continuity that Terry Moore and the coach has had for several seasons. Like, so this is going to be like the first time in a while that she's had a significantly different roster. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I said they're a total rebuild. Now she might come out and surprise all of us. She might have put that team together. She might have put that puzzle together that is just surprising to all of us. But they need help. Defensively, they were in the 57th percentile, and offensively, they were good. They were in the 80th percentile, but they lost a lot when they lost Shea and Garzon. I mean, that was a big hit for them. So, and the five transferred in. One of them shoots 47% field goal percentage, but of the five transfers they have coming in, none of them have significant minutes from the schools that they were at before. So that's why it's going to be pretty interesting to see what Terry Moore can do with this team.
Yeah, this brings up a discussion about not just losing quality players, but losing experienced quality players.
Yeah.
How much of a difference do you assign to, losing really talented young transfers to losing really talented veteran transfers? Like, how much do you think that sort of detail matters? Because you could say that both transfer A and transfer B, they're both talented, but transfer B has more experience. How much do you think that normally means? And obviously, fit within a system is certainly a an important variable, but like just kind of on a broader level, like a 40,000 foot view, the younger talented transfer versus the older talented transfer, in your mind, is there a significant difference between the two, if at all?
Oh yeah, and I have to go back to looking at to talking about the Ivies, right? Look at you had, they were good, and they were experienced, right? And then if you have a freshman transfer coming in that you get that didn't get a significant amount of playing time at that team they were there before, confidence wise, where is she going to be? And then experience wise, especially in the Power Five conference, where is she going to be? So it's just gonna be interesting to see what Indiana does with this roster that they have. But yeah, I have them going from 10th to 13th.
Yeah, to me, watching that team, and of course, Indiana gave USC battles each
Yeah,
time the two teams played. Like Garzon, like that's
blow
a
up.
tough player to guard, and she was clearly very smart, knew where she wanted to be on the floor, and so beyond just the raw production and the three-point shooting capability that Garzon brought to the table, you can't. It's not something you're going to find in a box score. Being
Yeah,
tough, being smart, basketball IQ. So Indiana loses those components as well as the raw statistical production as well. So very interesting
yeah,
call there. I think there's a lot of merit to that. All right, let's go to
yeah.
number 12 on your list.
Okay. Minnesota, I have at number 12. And what's interesting about this Minnesota pick is, as you know, in the pre rankings that some analysts did, they had Minnesota in the top 25. Remember that?
Yes.
But look, and that was all based on the WBIT showing. I think they were the champions of the WBIT tournament. But here's the thing. Last year they finished 13th in the Big Ten. They were 8-10. In that WBIT tournament, they only played one Power Five conference team. And that one Power Five conference team was Florida, who finished at the bottom of their conference. So I mean, if you're stacking their potential off that, to me, you're looking at the analytics completely wrong. You know what I mean? So they beat Belmont in the championship game, but when I'm looking at overall, their overall record and who they've played and so on and so forth, you can't place Minnesota in the top 25 based on one WBIT tournament that they didn't play anybody, you know, worth noting other than Belmont in the championship game, which is a mid-major team.
Cece, you and
So
I always talk about statistics and what they really mean. The statistics that have real solid value, the statistics that are empty, fluff, cotton candy, junk food, and being able to differentiate between a meaningful statistic and a hollow statistic. So, in light of what you've said, like, is there an analytical element or a measurement of team quality that not only looks at margin of victory, and shooting percentage and defensive rating, those kinds of things, but also accounts for strength of schedule, because that is the point you're making with Minnesota. Is there a stat or a rating in your mind that
yeah,
does a good job of marrying the statistics and the quality of opponent? Is there something
I
that you really gravitate to when you crunch those numbers and you weigh those different factors?
I think there is, but I haven't done it for this. I guess maybe I should have. But honestly speaking, I wasn't looking at strength of schedule overall. I was just looking at Big Ten schedule and who they're playing in the Big Ten to analyze where I think they'll finish in the Big Ten. But I think there is something that you can dive into that looks at their strength of schedule. But the team four factors are important too. And the team four factors are their net rating, their offensive rating, their defensive rating overall. So I think when you look at those components, but to me, it's really night and day because when you're looking at non-conference versus conference, to me, those should be divided anyway when you're looking at statistical data because non-conference schedules are usually, a build up to what the conference schedule is going to be like. And so the stats can be completely different in non-con versus conference. And so I think marrying those two together will skew what you actually need to be looking at.
100% agree. And one obvious point to make about non-conference versus conference, coaches pick the non-conference games they will play. Coaches and
Yeah.
ADs work together to select how they want to map out their non-conference path. Obviously, the conference schedule, they don't have any choice in the matter. So I definitely think that those should be in separate silos. All
And,
right.
and you remember too, in non-con, sometimes schools get paid, to go play someplace else as well. So in non-conference and conference, I just think when you're looking at stats, they got to be separated.
Yeah, I would also say that non-conference, like you choose the dates when you play, and like USC ran into what was a really brutal Big Ten schedule that it had no control over whatsoever in terms of the travel, in terms of the logistics, conference schedule. And when you're a Big Ten school, you're generally playing at home and you're generally playing along a schedule that your program, your head coach, your AD is able to map out. So all sorts of complications in conference play that don't exist in non-conference play. So yeah, it definitely lends itself to having different, just have metrics for non-conference only, conference only. I think that would shed a lot of light on teams across the country. And of course, this applies in any sport, not just women's college
Yeah.
basketball. Like this should be done around the whole college sports industry. All right, number 11 on your list
Okay.
as we
So
continue.
just so everybody knows, when you see me turn my head, I have actually built out an Excel sheet, where I list offensive rating, defensive rating, three-point shooting, record from last year, who's returning, who's not returning. When you see me looking, that's what I'm looking at, guys. I'm not, just looking at air over here. So what number are we on?
11.
Okay, here we go. I have Oregon at 11. Now, Kelly Graves is a good coach. Um, Last year they finished eighth, and I have them dropping. They lost Dana Evans, which is a big hit for them. However, I will say they do have a more seasoned team than others going into conference play, and they do get Katie Faisal back, and they got Avery Kane from UCLA, who was, ranked pretty high in the high school rankings the year before last, but she didn't get a lot of playing time at UCLA. They only had two kids that transferred out, so it's going to be pretty interesting. I just don't see them again in that top 10 echelon of teams for next year. They seem to be failing on the recruiting end, and in my opinion, they're not getting any top recruits like they used to before. They're not drawing the Sabrina Ionescu's and players like that like they used to. So it's kind of win by committee. And then to me, in my opinion, when they lost the assistant coach that's now coaching at TCU, that was a big loss for them because he was a great recruiter, the head coach for TCU.
So really, you basically answered my question because Oregon was a Final Four caliber program. If the 2020 NCAA tournament had not been wiped out by the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, Oregon was the clear-cut favorite with Sabrina Ionescu on board. From an Oregon perspective, certainly a shame that NCAA tournament never got played. So I was about to ask, why has Oregon fallen off the map the way it did? You provided those answers because Kelly Graves had it going at Gonzaga, consistent overachiever there, and then he gets Sabrina and builds Oregon into a powerhouse. It's really one of the more striking stories of women's college basketball this decade that Oregon on the mountaintop at the beginning of this decade is now definitely, a middle of the pack program in the Big Ten. So,
Yeah, they have a lot to work on. I mean, defensively, you know, they have a lot of, they're not a defensive minded team. They got better last year. They were in the 65th percentile, which is in the light green, still not where they need to be. Teams need to be up in the 90s when you talk about elite defensive teams or good defensive teams. 60 is to me not that good. And they center around guard play and perimeter shooting. So they had a post last year, you know, they had a post. I'll put it like that. But this year, going into next year, is going to be, I don't know. I don't know. I'm up in the air with Oregon. Like I said, I don't think they'll finish in the top 10. And I have them where I have them because of the continuity of play, their coaching, the assistant coaching, the head coach, everything. Kelly Graves is a good coach. I have a lot of respect for him, but it just seems like they fell off when the assistant coach left. He went to go to Sacramento State first, and now he's coaching at TCU. So that's
no,
when if you go look at Oregon's record, they started to slide when that happened.
yeah, I mean, throughout college sports, throughout college basketball, lacking that ace recruiter who really brings in the top prospects, losing your wingman as a head coach, that often it proves to be a negative turning point. And so that is in play with the Oregon Ducks. All right, Cece, last team on this list, this segment of the preseason Big Ten standings, the team you predict will be number 10. And so again, to kind of retrace to the beginning of our show, the 10th place team in the Big Ten figures to be an NCAA tournament bubble team. So a team that's in the mix for an at-large bid, but won't be like at the forefront of that conversation. So number 10 in the Big Ten.
And you see me on my forehead because now when you get top 10 on, it gets really, really difficult because this team, it can jump. To me, it could jump all the way to 6 if it shows out, maybe 7. But right now I have them at 10, and that team is Nebraska. I have Nebraska at number 10. The tallest player on the team is 6'3". They have 2 players at 6'3". They do have. I'm anxious to see Alana Neal from. She's a 5'10" freshman from Ontario Christian High School. I think she's going to help them a lot. They lost 2 of their main players to graduation. One of them being Markowski, who was their glue player. They have 3 transfers coming in. One of them is going to be significant for them. Claire Johnson, who's a 5'9" shooting guard. She averaged 26 minutes per game at her last school. They finished 10th in conference last season, so I have them at 10th again this season.
So the thing with Nebraska, from watching Nebraska against USC, other teams in the Big Ten, Nebraska runs very, very structured half-court
Yep.
sets. They get the ball
Yep.
movement, they get the spacing, like they're like very intentional, right? Like a lot of teams seem free form, scattered, or they do a lot of ISO, two person game. No, Nebraska, it's 5 people sharing the sugar. So, are there concerns just that the specific parts that are no longer with this roster were carrying that team, were kind of the linchpins to the extent that this structured team-based offense just isn't going to generate the same production it did last season?
I mean, they still have a good core of players. That's why I'm on the fence with them. They have a good core, but they lost 2 of their best players to graduation. So that's what's going to hurt them. Um, you said, you were just talking about their offense. I'm going to tell you exactly what I wrote down. Offense is methodical, efficient, and adaptable. That's exactly what I put about the way they run their offense. So you said structured, I said methodical. They're very intentional, like you said. So um, they got in 3 transfers, and like I said, the one that they got in, she was made the all freshman team with the conference that she came from, and so I just have them at 10. I have them, no movement up, no movement down. Can they move up? Yeah, depending on the other teams that I have ranked. But it's going to be interesting to see what Amy does with this team this year.
So this leads to a general overview question as we wind down this particular Big Ten preview episode here on the Trojans Wired USC Women's Basketball Podcast, and that is, and you already alluded to this with Nebraska, that they could be as high as 6. Any other teams in this group where you see a wide degree of variance between what this team's ceiling could be and what this team's floor could be? So we already talked about Nebraska as being that kind of team. What do any of the other 4 teams seem to have the potential to either be several places above where you put them or several places below?
If it's going to be any team, I would have to say Indiana just because of the coach. You know what I mean? I mean, and how she puts this team together. Like I said, I think they're in a rebuild, but she's a good coach. So I'm anxious to see what she does with this team. And, they could creep up. I mean, I have them at 13th. They could go to 10. Who knows? It depends on how the movement is with the other teams. And like I said before, I'm still trying to get to know these teams and understand these teams. So this was a great exercise for me because I'm just like, woof, Lord Jesus, help me.
The off season is a time to stay in shape, and so Cece is definitely staying in shape analytically and intellectually, making sure that when we're ready for the actual season in November, that she's not out of shape, so to speak.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
Cece. So promote what you have going on at your Substack and your USC women's basketball channel on YouTube.
Yeah, I dropped 2 Substacks this past week. Both of them are really good stories. One of them is about Rhea Marshall, and shoot, I forgot what the other one's about, but I dropped 2. Oh, the other one was about NIL and the house settlement. So yeah, that was a good article too. And then my YouTube channel, I have Mackenzie Forms podcast has dropped. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, um, I want you to watch that because she said some really good things in that podcast with regards to playing with JuJu and being coached by Coach Lindsay Gottlieb and that whole program and Beth Burns. So that I really have fun doing that podcast. I got some stuff I'm working on. Rhea Marshall and why Connecticut should be playing her more. And I'm going to be doing a film study on Kennedy Smith.
And Kennedy Smith is playing for the USA. What is it? The under 19 team,
Yeah, America
Santiago,
team.
Chile.
Yeah, America team. The game comes on today. If you guys want to watch it, it's courtside 1681 or something like that, and it's stream for free, so you can watch it.
Okay, courtside
No,
1681. That
courtside 1891. Yeah, just pull it up on the web. Courtside 1891,
so it's a
and you
streaming
can.
outlet.
Yeah, it's a streaming outlet. You can stream the game for free.
Okay,
Yeah,
very,
five.
very helpful.
Yeah,
Because I'm not aware of
5:25
any
p.m.
major TV outlets for that.
No, I'm sure it'll be put on YouTube later on, but I
Yeah,
want to watch it
live.
today, so I'll
Live
be
is just going
streaming
to
it.
be streaming.
Yeah, yeah. So if you
Okay.
guys hear that, my gardener is here, so if you hear that noise in the background, forgive me. Um,
Okay. But
but yeah, and
anyway,
then
we have some Kennedy Smith evaluations that we'll be able to do
yeah, I'm
to
doing
fill the
that.
summer
I already have the format completed. I just got to do the film work, and then also Truth in the Trenches new episode will be out Thursday.
with Cameo Williams. All right,
Yep.
Cece, any final thoughts?
Hey, no, I'm excited. When I start doing this stuff, I get excited. I get intrigued because I can't wait to see how good I am or how much work I need to do within the Big Ten conference itself. But yeah, I'm excited moving forward.
I would just say it's just good to put down a marker, right? Like it's not as though we're assigning an amazing amount of weight to these predictions. It's just kind of what's our early sense. And then when the season gets started, we can measure, are
Yeah,
these teams living up to or living down to the predictions? And that's how we evaluate coaching. That's how we evaluate roster fit and all these moving parts so that when USC has portal decisions to make, we can say, hey, this team, this player, like they're doing really well. Maybe they fit USC's portal class for the next season. So it's all part of a larger vision of evaluating what's surrounding USC in this vast women's college basketball ecosystem. So it's not just having a take or like we're assigning weight to these predictions. No, it's just getting a feel for the landscape that USC exists in. We're kind of preparing ourselves as much as you, the audience, for what's to come this Big Ten basketball season. All right, so that's all for this episode. For CC Clay, I'm Matt Zemek. Stay tuned for more
I have
summer
one more.
off-season offerings. And Cece, you have one more note
Yeah,
along those
I'm
lines.
sorry. I do have one more thing to add with Penn State. I am looking
Okay.
forward to seeing how Keomi McMiller fits into Penn State's system and how if she's going to develop an offense where Keomi is the center and she kind of drives the flow of the offense, or if she's going to put Keomi McMiller in a system ran offense. I mean, she runs her offense for guards. It's a guard oriented play scheme. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does with Keomi McMiller and Grace Merkel together,
And
their
just
post.
Keomi McMiller, notable in that she transferred from one Big Ten program, Rutgers, to another Big Ten program. London Jones transferred from one Big Ten program, UCLA, to another one, USC. It's going to be interesting to see how the transfers who transferred specifically within the Big Ten fare in the upcoming season. All right, so for CC Clay, this is Matt Zemek. More Big Ten preview shows coming your way this summer. And of course, 4th of July weekend, 1 week away. Stay safe out there, everybody. So, CC and I will see you next time here on the Trojans Wire podcast. Thanks for watching and
Fight
listening.
on, fight on, fight on.